Hey, it's Moreland with another 2018 guide for Black Desert Online. In this guide, we're going to go over some general tips about progressing your worker empire, and then take a city-by-city look at the best nodes across the game. As always, feel free to check the description for timestamps if you want to skip around the video. For hiring workers, the first thing you should do is fill up empty character slots that you have on your account, since each of these characters has their own energy pool that they will regenerate passively even when the characters are not online. So you can then use these energy pools every few days to hire more workers. There are 5 tiers of workers that you may encounter when you talk to the worker hire NPC. Never hire the naive workers, even if you are brand new to the game. They are just a waste of lodging. Green humans are okay to start with, but don't bother with green goblins or giants. Hire blue workers of all types until you've progressed beyond needing them. And of course, hire yellow and orange workers of all types whenever you get the chance. Orange workers are pretty rare and will only show up every 2,000 or 3,000 energy spent. So even if you are at the point where you're almost fully decked out with orange workers, you'll still want to hire yellow workers just to level them up and attempt promotions. Promotions are more likely to succeed on higher level workers, but leveling all the way to 30 usually takes too long. A good balance is to level a worker to 20 and then do 2 promotions back to back. You should aim to always have a worker taking the promotion test somewhere 24/7, as this will be the biggest bottleneck to your progression when it comes to nodes. Sometimes it can be worth it to check the worker exchange and look for yellow or orange workers in here. If you can find workers that are low level, they are very cheap, so these are a really good deal. Workers that are maxed out at level 30 can be a bit more expensive. You're just going to have to decide for yourself if it's worth paying that extra money. And if you don't have a worker that is currently being promoted, sometimes you can find yellow or blue workers on here that still have promotions left. It's pretty rare, but like I said, you can check this every once in a while and see if there's a worker that you actually need, or if there's a worker that you could just buy for cheap and attempt promotions. The worker exchange is global, so that means you can buy workers from people in every city here, not just the city that you are currently in. Now, in the long run, the artisan human is by default going to be the best worker on most nodes for most people. However, artisan goblins tend to be better on nodes with 1500 distance or more. So if you click on a node without sending a worker there, you can check the workload and distance over here. If you want to learn more about what these stats mean, then I recommend checking out the advanced node guide. I'll put a link to that in the description and up in the corner there. It's an older video, but none of the concepts have changed, so it's just as useful now as it was when I made it. If you get a good grasp of the ideas in that video, you won't ever need another node guide from me or anyone else ever again, even when new content is added in the future. There are some other exceptions that guide will go over, such as using 150 speed goblins on nodes that are capped at 150 workload. And also, if you're someone who goes for very extended periods of time without being able to refresh your workers, like 12 hours or more, then you might find yourself in a situation where giants end up being useful, artisan giants. So again, if you want to know kind of the ins and outs of selecting the right worker and what's going to fit your playstyle and your schedule, then consider checking out that guide. For the rest of the guide, we are going to take a town-by-town look at which nodes are high, medium, and low priority. Instead of trying to max out a particular town all at once, you should focus on getting the high priority nodes across every town as soon as you can. Then, once you get into like the 150 to 250 CP range, you can come back to each town and take the medium priority nodes. Once you've got all those, you can use your remaining points, usually for people in the 250 to 350 range, to take the low priority nodes. It's impossible to take every node in the game, even with 400 contribution, so many nodes will also just be skipped completely. Don't follow these numbers too strictly. They're going to vary a lot from person to person depending on what else you're doing with your contribution. Just use them as a general guideline. And unless otherwise stated, you can always just sell the materials that you get from these nodes on the markets. If you have a use for them, of course, that's great. And if not, and if you're just wondering, why is that a higher priority node, the answer by default is going to be because you can sell it on the market for a lot of money. There's a lot of factors that go into this based on, the market price of the item, the distance of the node from town, how much materials the node will yield, etc., etc. So all of that stuff is being accounted for when we decide the prioritization here. Keep in mind one last thing. This is based on prices and workloads for the NA server, so EU will probably be similar enough for this guide to work, but for players in other regions, things are likely to be very different. So you'll need to watch the advanced node guide and maybe get some of your guildies involved and try to figure out together which nodes are going to be the best ones to take. Let's start off by talking about Velia. Velia is going to be a bit more complicated than the other cities due to how many cooking nodes are in the area. So depending on whether or not you're doing cooking, there's going to be two different setups that we go over. You're going to get your lodging in Velia from the middle of town right here. Pick all these up as soon as you can because there are a lot of high priority nodes in the area. And then you can also get 2 more points of lodging over here at Tuscany Farm. So since lodging is so limited, this is going to depend on if you have cash shop lodging or not. Some of this you simply won't be able to take if you don't have the cash shop lodging. But starting off, high priority nodes for everyone are going to be the iron and copper nodes out at Coastal Cave, the arrow mushroom node at Forest of Plunder, and the ash timber node at Iwa's Hill. There's also a fortune teller mushroom node at Iwa's Hill that you can consider to be high priority, but only if you're skipping the cooking nodes. If you're not skipping the cooking nodes, let's go over those because those will also be high priority. So if you're doing cooking, then you should be taking the potato and chicken meat nodes at Finto Farm. It's actually the eggs that you're after here. The chicken meat isn't very important. But there's also potato and chicken meat at Bartelli Farm. There's more potatoes at Loggia Farm. And then there's 2 corn nodes at Tuscany Farm. All of these are going to be high priority for someone who's doing cooking. But if you're not interested in doing cooking, you can skip these nodes and you can focus on other nodes in the area like the fortune teller mushroom node that I mentioned earlier. So high priority if you're doing cooking. If you're not doing cooking, you can also take Goblin Cave as a medium priority, both the copper and ash timber nodes. And you can take Balino's Forest, ash timber, and Sunrise Herb as a low priority. And then finally, you can take Forest of Seclusion, maple, and copper nodes as a medium priority. And Ancient Stone Chamber, you'll just kind of have to figure out for yourself what the priority for this is. If you're someone who needs the Trace of Earth, this is probably a high priority. If you're someone who doesn't need Trace of Earth, if you're not doing a lot of alchemy or anything like that, then you can probably skip this altogether. Now, I mentioned Forest of Seclusion as a medium priority only if you're taking cooking nodes. And you might notice that I have the cooking nodes, but I also have Forest of Seclusion. The reason for that is because my Forest of Seclusion workers are actually Olvia workers. So just to summarize this one more time before we move on to Olvia, high priority cooking nodes are going to be these 4 right here, but if you're not doing cooking, then you skip these and you can focus on other nodes in the area such as Goblin Cave, Balino's Forest, and Forest of Seclusion. Now since I do have the cooking nodes in Velia, like I said, my Forest of Seclusion workers are actually Olvia workers. Let's talk about Olvia lodging, and then we'll go over the rest of the Olvia nodes. The best Olvia lodging is this tree right here, 6-1, 6-2, and 6-3. I'm skipping some of the low priority stuff in Olvia, so I don't need this much, but once you get enough points to fill out Olvia, this is the lodging tree that you want to go for. There's a medium priority grape node at Costa Farm, a low priority ash node at Wolf Hills, and then a high priority iron and mushroom node at Coastal Cliff. So once you take this as a high priority, it links you up to Coastal Cave, and that's what allows me to send my Olvia workers all the way down to Forest of Seclusion, since Olvia and Velia are now linked. So I can send workers all the way down here. I could even send an Olvia worker to Ancient Stone Chamber if I wanted to. Maybe I want the Trace of Earth, but I don't consider it to be a too high of a priority, and I don't want to give up Velia lodging for it. Then I could use Olvia workers for that instead. And then finally, there are some low priority copper nodes at Imp Cave that you can also use Olvia workers for once this is all linked up. Next, let's talk about the city of Heidel. The best lodging in Heidel is going to be up here, this 8-1 tree. You don't need to get all of this at once, just get it as you need it. And then there's a high priority node over here at Lynch Farm Ruins that gives Trace of Savagery. If you can't see this node, and this is true for any of the excavation nodes in the game, the way you unlock these is by going to the node manager. You talk to the node manager, invest in the area node first, and then that will give you a dialogue with the NPC where you can talk to them again and spend 30 or 35 energy and unlock the worker sub node after that. So talk to the node manager, invest in the node, talk to them again, spend energy, and then that will show you the shovel node here, and that'll keep it unlocked permanently after that. So the Trace of Savagery here, this is a material that if you're just taking it and selling it to the market, it's not going to give you a whole lot of silver every day. But if you're stockpiling it for crafting in the future, then it could be very worthwhile. Even if you're not doing a lot of crafting right now, I still suggest that you start stockpiling Traces of Savagery, because if you ever get into crafting, specifically alchemy, you're going to wish that you had a stockpile of Trace of Savagery. And it's on the way to stuff that we're taking anyways, so pick this up as a high priority node either way. And then next to it, the Silver Azalea node, you can just treat as low priority. After that, we have a high priority cooking honey node over at Alejandro Farm. This stuff is really valuable. And then a medium priority pumpkin node. To the west, we have a medium priority maple node at Northern Plain of Serindia, and a low priority Silver Azalea node. And then above that, there's a medium priority fleece node at Lynch Ranch. This is the only fleece node in the game, so to some people who need a lot of fleece for their crafting, I guess you consider this a high priority, but you're going to have to go through these other nodes anyways, so by the time you get there, either way, it's probably a medium priority. South of Heidel, we have some high priority flax nodes. One of them is at Costa Farm, and one of them is at Moretti Plantation. And then there's also wheat nodes. Since we're in the area anyways getting the flax, we might as well pick up the wheat even if you're not cooking. If you are cooking, then obviously the wheat is high priority. If you're not cooking, then just pick it up after you pick the flax. So that would be a medium priority. And same with this pumpkin node at Costa Farm. You can also pick that as a medium priority. And then once we're done with Moretti Plantation, we work our way through Eastern Gateway and get a medium priority maple node out at Castle Ruins. And then that paves the way to get a low priority flax node out at Kamasylvia Temple. And even though this looks like it's in Medaya, this is still a Heidel node. We send a Heidel worker over to this through this kind of V connection right here. Next we have Little Town of Glish. Lodging in Glish is pretty straightforward. There's not that many buildings, so you just start with the first one and work your way up if you need more slots. The high priority Glish nodes are going to be over here at Southern Cianaga. There's an iron ore and a cloud mushroom node that you'll want to take as soon as you can. And then we have some medium priority nodes over here at Glish Swamp, the lead ore and the cloud mushroom. And then a low priority pine node down here at Serindia Shrine. For Keplan, there's a very high priority coal node that you're going to take as soon as possible at Keplan Quarry. Then after that, you get the lodging here at 3-1 if you need it. If you have cash shop lodging, you may be able to skip this. But grab that lodging and then there's another high priority node up at Ozy Pass that gives cedar timber. Now, if you do have cash shop lodging, you can also take some low priority nodes way down here to the south. You kind of have to make this connection that goes all the way down to Primal Giant Post. Once you get there, Primal Giant Post has lead ore, Hexstone Wall has iron ore, and then Marie Cave has a pine timber node. That all of these, like I said, if you have cash shop lodging, it's a pretty expensive connection, but you can take these as a low priority if you have extra points. If you don't have cash shop lodging, then don't worry about these nodes at all. Just worry about getting the quarry and the cedar timber up at Ozy Pass. For Calpheon City, the best lodging is going to be down here in the bottom left corner, tucked away. This 3-building combo is really efficient, and then if you still need extra lodging after that, just set your filter over here to lodging, and then just look for some blue buildings that only cost 1 CP each, and you can grab 1 or 2 extra points if necessary. The higher priority nodes out of Calpheon are going to be Northern Wheat Plantation. If you're doing cooking, all 3 of these are going to be high priority. If you're not doing cooking, then you could probably set these to a medium priority instead, but since you're passing through this on the way to other nodes, it is worth grabbing these, even if you're not doing cooking, and you can just sell the wheat and the barley to the market. Over at Old Dandelion, we have a birch node that's going to be high priority, and then past that we have Crudo Cave, which has a 10 node, which will be medium priority. Going north from Northern Wheat Plantation, Berniento Farm, we have some traces here that we can get from an excavation node, and similar to the Trace of Savagery node, if you're just getting traces for the sake of selling them to the market, it's not that exciting, but you might want to grab this and just stockpile the materials, since this is a cheap node that's on the way to other stuff that we're taking anyways. You can pick this up as a medium priority. Even if you don't need the materials right this second, you can just stockpile them, and then after that pick up birch timber and mushrooms from Breach Tree Ruins also as a medium priority. There's a low priority connection that you can do over here out to Quint Hill, which has lead ore and birch timber. And then some more medium priority nodes south of Calpheon. You connect over the mountain to Foniel's Cabin, where you have fir timber and tin ore down at Bear Riverhead. Bear Riverhead also gives powder of earth, which is useful for silver embroidered cooking clothes, so keep that in mind. Tin ore and fir timber are both also high value materials for processing. So if you're just selling this stuff to the market, then medium priority is fine, but if you're actually doing a lot of processing, then you should consider these to be worth more than their market value, and in that case you may want to take Foniel's Cabin and Bear Riverhead as a high priority instead. For Epheria, if you plan on doing cooking, then you should use your free worker slot in Epheria to at least grab the fish node at Randus Island. I like this one over here that has the dried octopus, since dried octopus is the only ingredient out in these fish nodes that counts as seafood. When you're cooking, there's two different categories. There's regular fish and seafood, and dried octopus, like I said, is the only one that's going to count for the second category. So you can grab that. If you don't care as much about the seafood, you can just grab this one. It's closer to town, and just get yourself some more fish instead for your fried fish or your good feed or whatever recipe that you're doing. And then after that, if you feel like you need more, you can either, they just added cash shop lodging for Epheria, so you could either grab that or you could buy some extra points of lodging for 1 CP each. This is my setup right here. I have 3 nodes. The reason I picked these 3 again is because they all have dried octopus. So it's not a ton of dried octopus, but I figure over time it adds up, and then I can use those for seafood recipes. But there are a whole lot of fish nodes out here, so I can't really tell you guys how to prioritize these. It all just comes down to how much cooking you're actually doing, but you should be able to figure out pretty quickly, you know, if you're running out of fish, then just take more nodes. Trent has a very high priority cedar node over here at Lumberjack's Rest area. And then after that, you're going to come over here and get some lodging from Bear. You can get Bear 1 and 2. This is going to be 3 contribution for 2 points of lodging. You can then take these 2 workers and put them on the Treant Forest Fir Timber and Mancha Forest Fir Timber nodes as a medium priority, possibly a high priority if you're someone who does a lot of AFK processing. Now, if you don't have cash shop lodging, that's going to be it for your Trent setup. The lodging after those 2 slots in Bear just becomes too expensive to be efficient. However, if you do have cash shop lodging, then you can also expand over to Rudum Outstation and take this 10 ore node as a medium priority. And if you want to, you can also buy the Bear lodging and instead use it down here for silk honey grass and cedar timber, but I would consider these to be pretty low priority. So the standard setup that I have with cash shop lodging is just these 4 nodes, and then I don't bother with these. But if you have some extra points at the end of your empire, then maybe you can grab them. Node setup in Kamasylvia is going to vary a bit depending on whether or not you have workers in the region doing crates. Even if you're not doing crates, the nodes around here aren't very exciting. Theoretically, you'll have 1 free slot in Old Wisdom Tree and 1 free slot in Grana. If you want to try and take this Moss Timber node at Old Wisdom Tree, you can give it a shot, but there's a chance that it won't even sell. If you can get it to sell, it's probably a medium priority. Same thing over here at Grana. You can use your free worker slot in Grana to take the knock ore at Lake Flondor at a medium priority. It's not a bad node. It also gives you powder of earth, but again, it just depends on if the knock ore will actually sell. Sometimes it sells and sometimes it doesn't, so you can check the market and see if that's a possibility. If you do have cash shop lodging, you can expand a bit more. There's another knock ore node down here at southern Kamasylvia. It doesn't come with the powder of earth, but if you can get the knock ore to sell, then that'll be a decent medium priority node. And then also over here at Polly's Forest, there's a mushroom node. The pink mushrooms here won't sell, but the blue mushrooms might. If you want to give it a try, then that's probably a medium priority node as well. A lot of people ask me about this strawberry node over at the cabin. Unfortunately, the yield on this isn't as high as we had hoped. If you need strawberries, you're better off just buying them from the Calpheon fruit vendor and saving your contribution points for something more productive. Moving over to the Medaya region, don't take any of the lodging that's actually in Tarif. It's not very efficient. If you need extra worker slots for Tarif, instead invest in the lodging up at Shuri Farm. Now, when it comes to Tarif nodes, there's basically 3 medium priority nodes that we're after here. There's the coal and zinc at Omar Lava Cave, and the acacia timber up at Stonetail Wasteland. And most of the value from these nodes comes from their processing value, so just keep that in mind. If you're not processing, then these nodes are not going to be as important to you. But there's 2 different pathways we can take to grab these nodes. The first one, which most of you should probably take, is by going through Kazula Farm right here. And if you do this, go ahead and take the cotton node as a medium priority as well. And then you'll connect through Azula Highland up to Omar Lava Cave, go through Medaya Shore, but don't take the copper node, and then finally end up at the acacia node at Stonetail Wasteland. And then as a bonus, if you're doing cooking, you can also add the sweet potatoes at Shuri Farm as a low priority. But if you're not doing cooking, I'd probably skip this completely. The other way that you could connect piggybacks off of some of the Heidel nodes that we got from earlier. So Castle Ruins and Kamasylvia Temple are still being sent from Heidel, but we can connect Tarif to Soldier's Grave, which will then zigzag back over to the Medaya region and end us up at Ancient Ruins excavation site. And there's a Trace of Earth node here that you could take instead of the cotton node. So it's just kind of up to you. The connection costs the same either way. The difference is here you get a 2 CP cotton node, and over here you get a 3 CP Trace of Earth node that also has some trash that you can sell to a vendor. If you're just looking for silver value, the cotton node's going to be better, but if you have a use for the Trace of Earth, then you should connect this way instead. And then obviously just take Canyon of Corruption, and that'll link to Stonetail Wasteland, and then you can hook back down through Medaya Shore into Omar Lava Cave from the top instead of from the south. People always ask me about the nodes up here. There's some White Cedar at Elric Shrine, and there's some timber nodes up at Medea Northern Highlands. I personally just think these are way too far from town. The connections are too expensive, and the nodes themselves are also too expensive. So I don't actually take any of the nodes up here, even as a low priority. I think that they're totally skippable. For Altinova, the best lodging is going to start at 6-1, and then you can just work your way up through this middle tree right here as it becomes necessary. There really aren't any good nodes around Altinova, but there's some we can take as a low priority. There's an iron and a zinc node down here at Abandoned Iron Mine. This iron node gives rough black crystal that you can use for Gurnal armor, but nowadays you can usually just buy rough crystal off the market, so it's not a big deal. Also, there's a zinc node down here. Zinc is a nice material to have for processing, but the workload for this node is particularly high. So even with an artisan goblin, you're not getting that much zinc on a daily basis, considering how expensive the node is. And then there's a couple more low priority nodes over here. There's 2 Elder Timber nodes, one at Veterans Canyon and one at Gorgo Rock Belt. You can usually sell Elder Timber to the market for a good price, but it's still a very expensive connection to get out here and grab these 2. So that's why they're a low priority. If you do decide to grab these, however, make sure you also grab Kunan's vacation spot for the purified water and the bag of muddy water. So this is not worth it just by itself. It's way too expensive of a connection from Altinova. But if you're already out here for the Elder Timber anyways, then it's definitely worth it to just hop over through Kadra Ruins and pick this up. For Sangream Bazaar, you have a copper node over at Capodia and a nutmeg node at Bazaar Farmland that are either going to be medium priority or low priority depending on the workload. Now, I'm not going to explain workload in depth here. If you want to learn more about how this stuff works, then check out the advanced guide. But for now, just go up to the top right corner of the map and click on Territory Resource Information. that'll open up a green bar right here, and you want to ignore the other two and just look at this green one. If this bar is close to the top, like 95% or higher, then take those two nodes that I mentioned as a medium priority. If it's below 95% like it is now, then you can wait till later. Just take them as a low priority. They're not nearly as good when the workloads are low. And then after you grab these, you can work your way down to Crescent Mountain. These are also low priority. There's two iron nodes here that also give rough black crystal. And then over at Crescent Shrine, there's a low priority date palm node and a very low priority titanium node. Titanium ore, unfortunately, even though it's a high value material, the yield on the titanium nodes out in Valencia is very low. So don't worry about this until you're done with everything else. The town of Shakatu has some interesting nodes right next to it at Shakatu farmland. Because of how close these nodes are to town, they can be very good. It just depends on a couple of things. This star anise node down here, if you can actually sell star anise on the market, then this is a high priority. You can actually get a lot of money per day from selling star anise to the market, even if it's minimum price. The problem is, and the reason I haven't taken the node, at least at the time of making this video, right now it takes a few days for star anise to sell on the NA market, and I can't be bothered to have it sitting there clogging up space. But if you actually can sell this stuff and it doesn't take too long, or if you just don't mind having it sit on the market, then you should take this as a high priority. The other two nodes here, the figs, similar to Sangrain Bazaar, the priority of these is going to be based off the workload in the area. So again, we'll back out, we'll come up to this top right corner, we'll click on territory and resource information. Right now in Shakatu, the bar is all the way up to the top. If this is close to the top, if it's 95% or higher, then take both of the fig nodes as a high priority. And if it's under 95%, then take them as a medium priority instead. With cooking becoming more popular, some of the nodes around Valencia City have jumped up to be a high priority, but I don't know how long that's going to last, so just keep in mind that these are a bit less stable than nodes from earlier in the guide. Again, you can use this green bar to kind of assess the popularity of a node, and if you see this drop behind or drop below 95%, then the breakpoints for certain workers on these nodes is going to diminish, and you're not going to get as many resources in the same amount of time. So just keep an eye on this. While this green bar is high, these are very good, but if it ever starts to go down, then I would drop these down in priority accordingly. So starting off, we have a date palm node and a freaking node over at Valencia Plantation, and then another date palm node up at Erdel Farm, and I would consider all three of those to be high priority, assuming the green bar is high and assuming the materials aren't too flooded on the market. Both of those things are definitely at risk of happening, so just keep an eye. There's also two pistachio nodes, one at each of these locations, that you can mess with as well. I haven't personally tried selling pistachio on the market. It looks good, but I don't know how long it'll stay good, so if you want to take these pistachio nodes, it could be very good money, but it could also easily crash, so you can try that if you want to. The silk culture here, when silkworms are selling on the market, this is a lot of silver, so if you can actually sell it, then you can take this as a high priority. I find that usually the stuff just sits there and it takes like a week to move, if it moves at all, and so for that reason I skip this node completely. But if you're in a region where this stuff is actually selling, then go ahead and take it. Down here, the TEF nodes, TEF isn't as valuable, so this is a low priority or maybe just entirely skippable. Up to the north, you have the nodes around the crater. There's a bunch of vanadium and titanium and such up here. Unfortunately, the stuff is just too far from town and it's too expensive and the yields are too low, so none of this is worth taking, even if you have a lot of contribution. You only need 2 worker slots for Arehaza, so you'll have one by default. You can buy a second one for 50 cents off the cash shop. And once you do that, send both workers to the palm forest right here and take the palm timber / coconut nodes as a high priority. If you can't or don't want to buy the pearl shop lodging, then just send 1 worker from Arehaza and 1 worker from Valencia, but either way, these nodes are going to be high priority. That concludes the 2018 node guide. There will be another 2018 node guide later this year after the Dragon expansion is released on NAEU, so keep an eye out for that since it'll change some of these things around. In the meantime, I will continue to release videos on other topics, so subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. I'm also streaming the game about 5 days a week over on Twitch, where you can watch for free. Remember that if you have Amazon Prime, you can link it to your Twitch account and get a free Twitch subscription every month. And this financially benefits the streamer of your choice at no additional cost to you. Finally, you can also hire me for one-on-one coaching via Discord, in which you can get personalized guidance on a variety of topics such as the best way to set up workers according to your schedule, or the best way to enhance your gear, or really any other topic related to the game. If you'd like to learn more about this, just message me directly through that Discord server that you see there on the screen. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.